Rex was such an amazing dog. I think I learned a lot about myself when he came to live with me. My wife Rose convinced me to get him back in March 2021. The pandemic restrictions were in full force in California, and we both were working from home at the time. I wasn't sure about Rex at first, but she really wore me down. Rose created a PowerPoint presentation to break down the costs of adopting, training, and providing medical care for him. The ad for him mentioned that he would only be adopted to households who could provide experienced care and training for him. He was an Australian cattle-dog staffy mix who had been moved from shelter to shelter. Poor guy had been in 5 different homes in a single year, with none lasting even 2 weeks before being brought back to the shelter. He was scared, reactive, and more work than a lot of people were willing to handle. We went to the shelter to meet him and take him on walks a few times before taking him home. We wanted him to get used to us to hopefully ease the transition. His fur was stained. His paws were pink and raw. He had chronic stomach problems. He also gagged and coughed a lot. I was nervous about taking a dog who clearly had not been cared for very well, but we also both knew that he might not have a lot of other chances. We both had worked hard to train our dogs growing up and thought, who better than us, to take care of this sad-looking cattle dog mutt. We paid close attention to follow all of the instructions the trainer recommended at the shelter. When we first got Rex, he slept in a crate at night and clearly hated it. Emotionally, Rex seemed very blunted and frozen. Rose took it upon herself to spend a lot of time with him. Unfortunately, this meant that he bonded with her and began guarding her from me by placing himself between us and growling at me when I walked into the room. We made him lay down and move away when this happened. After a month of living with us, he started appearing less stiff, and I grew more comfortable walking him. The week before our anniversary, a photo memory from my wedding appeared on my phone. Excited, I showed it to my wife in the living room. Before I knew it, Rex had bitten both of my hands, and I ran into my bedroom to get away from him. In shock, I fell on the ground. While most of the marks weren't terrible, my palm and thumb had been pierced pretty deep and were bleeding a lot. After trying to slow the bleeding with towels, we went to urgent care for stitches. Later that week, we had to go to the ER because the swelling in my hands was getting worse and worse. I was checked into the hospital when my right hand got really bad. I'm allergic to major antibiotics and ended up having to have surgery due to an abscess in my dominant hand. The recovery process was painful, but I know it could have been much, much worse. My wife and I had a lot of discussions about what to do next. A number of friends and family members encouraged us to put him down. We didn't have a lot of money, but decided to double down on training Rex, and I became his primary caretaker once my hands had healed. We paid for a number of different trainers to teach us and Rex tools to feel safe and make sure we had a better dynamic in our home. I remember being so scared to touch him and walk him again. Eventually, we found a training regimen that really worked, and Rex began to feel safe with me, and I with him. He would look up at me for cues when going on walks and became much more affectionate with me. I practiced gently training him every single day. He learned to really trust me. It became tough for me when I was called back into the office the next year because I started to miss him during the workday. Eventually, I got my confidence back. With support from my wife, I decided to go to graduate school so I could become a therapist. In the evenings when I was home, he would lay at my feet or lean so hard onto me that he would flop over like a rag doll. If there was someone at the door, he would bark once to let me know, and then wait patiently on his bed for me to take care of it. When I was doing research and writing papers at my desk, he would lay at the bedroom door, quietly waiting for me. Our connection continued to grow until he would choose to lay by my feet instead of close to my wife when we would sit on the couch together. Rex was scared of fireworks and would whine and hide himself under me. He would run to me anytime there was a thunderstorm or loud noises outside. For the next 2 years, I walked him 3 times a day, and he became so trusting and gentle with me. My wife taught him how to use a giant emery board to file his nails. I've never seen a dog learn new commands so quickly. We took Rex to the vet for a routine checkup, and everything seemed okay. I finally finished grad school and got my first job as a therapist. The next week, we went camping for a few nights to celebrate. It was a really nice, relaxing trip in the mountains. We had a good time exploring all of the new sights, and Rex loved the new environment. He sniffed every rock, tree, and bush. He made his own little bed by digging in the dirt so he could enjoy the shade in the afternoon. When we got back, our vet reached out to let us know that Rex's liver enzymes were off the charts. Rex started acting lethargic and began throwing up most of his food. We got him an ultrasound as soon as we could. Turns out he was born with an extra small liver and the medication recommended by a trainer, and his vet had been hurting him the last few years. We got him on a new liver medication right away. Things seemed like maybe they were stabilizing, so I didn't cancel a solo trip to visit my parents in the next state over. After I got there, my wife called me crying. Rex was not doing well and could barely stand and seemed in and out of consciousness. We called the vet, who told us there was nothing more that could be done. I booked a flight back home. The soonest I could get back was the next morning. I spent the rest of the day alternating between crying and trying to make the most of seeing my family. I got home the next day and Rex ran to the door smiling and tail wagging. My wife couldn't believe it, and neither could I. After this brief rally, Rex seemed to be in a lot of pain and retreated to the porch. I was exhausted from my flight and lack of sleep and laid on the couch. Rex came back in and laid right next to me. He had a seizure while we waited for his last trip to the animal hospital. My wife and I sobbed together when we sat on the floor with him at the very end. I hate saying goodbye. I couldn't believe nobody else wanted this dog. He just needed a home that would love him and provide the structure he needed to feel safe. His bed lies empty. His bowl sits alone. He isn't waiting for me by the door. My house feels empty. I've never been so heartbroken about losing a pet before. The word pet doesn't cut it for me. You're a good boy. You just needed to be shown how. I love you, Rex. I'm so glad that we never gave up on you.